Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny. Sometimes Colorado. Although this will be the last year in Colorado, I think I'm moving up to Wyoming full time at some point here soon. So I wanted to make a video to congratulate a hard fought and well earned campaign and victory for three absolutely phenomenal groups of people who ran for the Interim Constitutional Committee. Now, as many of you know, we are moving as quickly as possible as an ecosystem towards the age of Voltaire. And the age of Voltaire means that everything about Cardano is controlled by both on and off chain processes, but ultimately by you, the people in the Cardano ecosystem. One of the most important roles is the Constitutional Committee, which is a bit of a hybrid of a Supreme Court and a Senate. And their job is to work with the D-reps whom you select to help usher along changes to the network and assess whether they make sense from the perspective of both the Cardano Constitution as well as their own judgment. So over the last 2 years, we've had many conversations about how to build this as an ecosystem with more than 25 workshops around the world to discuss CIP 1694. The first stage in turning on the government is to elect members of the government. And an election was held where there's a transition for a temporary group, an interim constitutional committee, with 3 seats being opened up for the community to run and take over to begin the process of training and transitioning with the anticipation of adopting and ratifying a new constitution towards the end of this year and perhaps the first half of next year, depending upon how quickly things move along. This interim committee will then be replaced by a final constitutional committee, perhaps of similar members, but that's your choice. And everything moving forward will be an election from here on out. So this is the first time ever the ecosystem as a whole had an opportunity to flex its voting muscles, and people got to campaign and run for various roles of significance and prominence in this ecosystem. And I couldn't be prouder of how things were conducted and done. 21 candidates from across the world ran, many representing coalitions. In fact, groupings won. The 3 victors, according to the votes that were tallied and audited from Salmon DAO, with help of Pi from Sunday Swap, the Cardano Atlantic Council, Cardano Japan, and the Eastern Cardano Council. The Cardano Atlantic Council is comprised of Adam Dean. Good to see you again, Adam. Look forward to working with you. Beatrix Anihia, Mike Hornan, Jennifer Brito, Tiago Nunes, and of course, Richard McCracken. And I apologize if I've mispronounced your last name. I tend to do that from time to time. I still am an old Hawaii boy. And then in terms of Cardano Japan, Shira Yun, Shizuke Wakuda, Rina Uishi, Hideki Takashi. It's late at night. And then, of course, the Eastern Cardano Council, we have Joe Allam, Mark Byers from Australia, Oscar Hong from South Korea, Phil Lewis from Australia, Hai Nguyen from Vietnam, and Yuki Oishi from Japan. So we have people from the United States, Norway, Canada, Brazil, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, and Vietnam representing the set. And what's so cool is that it was a very close election, especially with the Eastern Cardano Council and some individual candidates. In particular, Mario from Argentina, he came within 2 million votes of winning, and of the 455 million ADA that was cast. Just truly extraordinary. So it was just a little bit of a hair. So everybody who ran, whether they won or lost, they have a place in the governance of Cardano. And these names will come up again. And as more seats open up, I wouldn't be surprised to see them very quickly fill them, especially next year as all seats are up for election. Now, many procedural things have to happen moving forward. In particular, the people who've won have been invited to come to a constitutional committee training workshop here in Colorado. And the goal of this workshop will be to help everybody get the right infrastructure, knowledge, and procedures in order to begin fulfilling their duties as a Constitutional Committee member. And there's going to be a lot of horizontal discussions about how people want to work together. There are 4 institutions, Intersect, the Cardano Foundation, Emergo, and Input Output. And there are 3 community roles. All 7 of us as institutions have to work together, talk to each other on a regular basis. The Constitution doesn't cover a prescription for how to do so. Rather, it's up for the Constitutional Committee at their discretion to decide how to interface with the institutions such as Intersect and each other. The channels of communication, the frequency of communication, how to broadcast decisions they make. These are the things that will establish precedents that shall live on for the years to decades to come in our ecosystem. So I'm incredibly excited to see where that goes and to discuss this in July with the Constitutional Committee elect members. After they take office, there are many things that are going to be happening this year. Almost immediately after taking office, they don't get to enjoy the honeymoon because there's already a hard fork in the plan. Should Chang take effect, Chang +1 is expected to be initiated 90 days thereafter, turning on the second part of the Cardano government, namely the DREPs. We anticipate dozens, if not hundreds, of DREPs to register and compete with each other for your voice in order to represent the will of the Cardano ecosystem. Already many projects I've discussed this with are intending to run as DREPs, register them, and to encourage the people that work with them and for them to delegate their voice there. So the Constitutional Committee has to decide how it's going to work with the DREPs and turn on that capability. Furthermore, the Constitutional Committee also has to work with Intersect and discuss how foundational things are going to be done, such as the product backlog, hard fork coordination, as well as things like the annual Cardano budget. Because as you know, a treasury of over 1.5 billion ADA will be made available as soon as Chang turns on and the DREPs are turned on. And so there's a very small window of time to begin a discussion for how a budget ought to be done. The Constitutional Committee members are an essential component of these discussions. By no means the only component, but this is one of the duties and tasks they signed up for, is to have an opinion in this respect. So we look forward to working with them and trying to figure this all out together. Many of these tasks and duties are new. It's the first time they've been done in our ecosystem, so precedent has to form and decisions have to be made. During the budget process, some foundational questions have to be answered, such as should Constitutional Committee members and perhaps some DREPs be offered a staff paid for by the budget of Cardano to help them perform their duties, and what remuneration is appropriate and what scale of staff. We see this, for example, with congressmen and senators, where they actually are afforded a staff to help fulfill their duties because of the nature of their duties and the seriousness of them. So this is just one of thousands of questions that are inevitably going to come up over the next 180 days. And we look forward to working with the newly elected Constitutional Committee members to help decide, as an ecosystem, what makes sense. In addition, another one of the duties of the Constitutional Committee members is to help facilitate the Constitutional Convention that is taking place in Buenos Aires this December. I will be traveling to Argentina and have the opportunity to meet with many government officials and the University of Buenos Aires, which has agreed to host the Constitutional Convention at their School of Law. It's a beautiful facility and a great location for it, and a good place to write a final constitution. Prior to going to the Constitutional Convention, we have to get delegates for it. And how we're going to do that as an ecosystem is by having more than 50 workshops across the world in 50 different countries. And these workshops will elect delegates and alternates, and they will then travel to Argentina to finalize a candidate constitution to be voted on by the government of Cardano. Our hope is that this process can go through efficiently and without friction. Now it's everybody's responsibility and duty as this turns on. The Constitutional Committee members who have been elected will be pivotal in assisting in this process and representing you and your voice. The Interim Constitution, the Interim Constitutional Committee, is just that, a temporary document with the intention of facilitating the harvesting of the will of the millions who follow the Cardano ecosystem. It is incredibly important that people understand that those documents, while amazing in their own right, are there to temporarily turn things on. It's only through the consent and will and brilliance of the millions of people of Cardano for us to ever truly become what we anticipate we ought to be, a digital nation state. Thus, we need your feedback. So these constitutional workshops that are going to be taking place all throughout the world, everywhere from Africa to South America to Asia, North America, and even Australia. In fact, I think we have 9 proposed workshops in Africa, just as an example, truly do represent the political diversity and cultural diversity of the world as a whole. The inputs into them will create a new document, which is going to be distinctly different from the interim constitution. Everything is frankly up for grabs. And within the articles, the structure and form that you have with 1694 could be modified. The composition and election process of the Constitutional Committee will also likely be modified. It could go from 7 members to more. They could be static or proportional, staggered terms, the length of terms, the voting systems used to elect them. Everything is actually up for grabs. You, the community, have to make these decisions. From our part, what we try to do is provide options and trade-offs and let people know what the consequences will be, in our belief, with data and historical precedent if one decision is made over another. But ultimately, you, the community, get the final say. And that's how it should be, because that's real decentralization. It takes an enormous amount of trust and optimism, and more importantly, a fundamental belief in the goodness of people, to believe that when you give people the right to have a voice and the mechanisms to have a voice, that they're going to make good decisions. I've always believed in the wisdom of the crowds, and I've always believed in the greater good if people are trusted. I'm not cynical, and I don't think for a moment that Cardano is filled with a bunch of passive, disengaged masses that don't care. Instead, I think it's the opposite. Nobody was paid to run for the Constitutional Committee. Nobody was told they had to do that. It wasn't part of a job. They decided to do that. They ran campaigns. They took the time. They learned the issues. And many of these people have invested countless hundreds of hours, if not thousands, over the last few years in trying to make this ecosystem great. They did so because they cared, and they did so because they believe that this is the kind of system that, if embraced and built up, can build a better world. That's the beginning of a beautiful road forward. If we keep that mentality and will, and we inculcate that into the government that is turning on, I have no doubt that Cardano will forever be the envy of the world and the bulwark of the new economic, political, and social systems of it. That is the task and challenge and the reward ahead of us. It's been the privilege of my lifetime being here for 10 years in many different roles and capacities. And as I've mentioned before during the debates, our service on the Interim Constitutional Committee will end with the new Constitution. And I've already said that input-output will not participate as a DREP or as a Constitutional Committee member. I think it's best for the ecosystem for a timeout in that respect. That said, our will to participate in the ecosystem is not only undiminished, but growing. We continue to employ hundreds of engineers who build products and code for Cardano. We continue to employ the largest research group in the entire world for cryptocurrency research, spanning from Stanford to Tokyo Tech and many places in between, and over 210 academic papers. They will continue writing academic papers that benefit the Cardano ecosystem. And we can't wait to bring products like Midnight and Lace and other such things to market to benefit the Cardano ecosystem, amongst others, because that's what we want to do. I built Cardano because I wanted to have a platform to challenge the economic, political, and social systems of the world and to bank the unbanked. I felt it was a moral imperative that if one had the means to do something, they ought to do something. And now I'm entering the stage of my career where I finally get to do that, and I get to do that with allies who have the same mindset. And by sharing this amazing milieu with so many others, it actually makes everything we do better. Because the reality is, when you look to our product backlogs, when you look to how a budget is done, when you look to how Cardano is going to be marketed, every single one of those artifacts moving forward will have the input of millions of people from more than 100 countries. How can anyone, anywhere, compete with that? There are many great companies in this world, from Apple to Microsoft, Google, everything in between. Some that have been around for a long time, the Exxon Mobils, some centuries, handed off from one generation to the next. But no company and no country is able to compete with something that has the brilliance of the entire world and the freedom for the world to participate the way that they want to. That's literally what we're creating here. It may take a little longer to do it the right way, but because it's been done the right way, we've built something that will be here for centuries to come. And you're all part of that now. Every single person listening in the Cardano ecosystem. There's a lot of challenges up ahead. There are some things that have to be solved. Studying mathematics throughout my life, I started to fall in love with the idea that we can create rigorous mathematical proofs and models for things. When you know something's true, you have a certainty about it because you've proven it, it's true. You have the ability to rigorously argue with people and show step by step a logic that converges to an undeniable and an infallible mindset. Politics and social systems will forever lack these properties. Unfortunately, everything from Arrow's theorem to game theory gives you pretty dreary results. No matter how much academic research we throw at these things, we will never be able to create the perfect formula for perfect governance because, simply put, it doesn't exist. So we have to learn as an ecosystem a new set of skills that peer review and formal methods, frankly speaking, are not going to deliver us. We have to learn how to build great governance systems and be patient enough to allow them to gradually become great. And we have to learn that they rely upon great institutions. So we have to hold institutions accountable. For example, with the budget process, not only do we have to build a great budget process, but we have to make sure every single dollar spent in the Cardano budget is just that. It's a dollar of the Cardano budget. Therefore, it is a collective property of the millions of people using the ecosystem. So this constitutional committee, amongst others in the governance capacity, have a moral obligation to make sure that the appropriate audit and oversight, as well as the appropriate dispute resolution mechanisms, are put into the system so that every dollar is well spent. And if it wasn't, there's a consequence for that. That's just one of dozens of examples of things that we have to sort out and figure out and have the patience to accept that not always will it be perfect. It's the same with ballot architecture. It's the same with the way we vote. It's the same with how inclusive the system is. We have to accept that all governance systems, especially decentralized ones, not everybody will participate. And that's an okay thing. But everybody has to have the right to participate. And if they so choose, no one can stand in their way. And unless and until we've delivered a system that has that capability, we have not achieved what we've sought out to do. So the road ahead, as I've said before, is going to be challenging. It has a lot of twists and turns, but nothing in life that's worthwhile is easy. At the end of the day, we have two options. We can either cynically and passively sit in our homes and talk about how the world is falling apart, or we can try to change that world. The power and promise of what we're doing right here today is we're showing every single person that free people can come together and figure out a better way of doing things, whether that be voting with integrity, sound money, or it be getting along with each other in different ways and being able to reach compromises and make decisions to disagree and commit for the greater good. That's a very special thing, especially in a world where people aren't really getting along as much as they should. That's what makes every single thing we do worth it. And that's why I've spent the last 10 years of my life not as young as I used to be. The hair is a little whiter, starting to fall out. Belly's a little bigger. That's okay. That's why I've spent the last 10 years chasing this, because I actually think we're going to win. And honestly, all the things that happened in the last few weeks, from crazy pigs getting crazy valuable, and I guess it's falling now, to a DDoS attack, which wasn't so successful, to this election, don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because the things that do matter are the fact that you're here to experience them with me and us. And together, we're going to get it done. So, to my colleagues now in the Constitutional Committee, welcome aboard. We can't wait to have you here. Pick up a shovel. We got some digging to do. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful day. Good night.